I'm going to do another quote because I think there's so many good ones from this book. When you do what I do for a living, that's part of the risk you take. To excel in emergency care, you subvert a little bit of your humanity to do it. You put your emotions and compassion in a safe little box while you deal with the problem at hand, and sometimes you fail to see the problem has a human face. How can we detach from the patients, which I think is a key factor a lot of times, without also losing our humanity? And how do we find that balance between detaching from the scene so that we can manage it, but also not losing that human side of ourselves to connect with our patients? How do we find that balance, do you think?
I don't know that I have the answer to it. I can tell you unequivocally that I have failed to strike that balance in the past. I have been too disconnected from my patients, and I have been on the other side where I felt in things entirely too much. Um, uh, the I guess that particular I had a particular call where bride and groom on the way to their honeymoon hit a horse in the road, and it killed the bride and left the groom unmarked, and killed several other or hurt several other people. And it was that night was the night from hell. I had 4 fatalities that night, and each one worse than the last. And to go back and look at it and go, how was I? I remember checking the bride. The husband is spattered with her blood in the driver's seat, and I reached down to feel a pulse and realized she was nearly decapitated. And my first thought was, dead meat, move on. And I did. I had to do a hot lap. I had to triage. I had multiple victims on scene, and I made that decision like that. This is a black. I need to move on to find the reds and the yellows. And it was only afterwards that I thought, Jesus, what have I done to myself to be able to make that decision with no hesitation? Mm-hmm. I don't know that I have found an answer to how you strike that balance. But one thing I do say, and this is a Kellyism, because I made this one up myself, is joy and pain are flip sides of the same coin. And if you insulate yourself against one, you deny yourself the ability to enjoy the other. And you see all these old crusty ER nurses and doctors and paramedics who nothing bothers them. Bullshit, it doesn't bother them. It just doesn't show. Mm-hmm. And if it hasn't bothered them, well, they've long since lost their humanity, and their faith in their fellow man has gone up like so much smoke out of the chimney. It's gone. And if you want to retain that, you got to be unafraid to feel now and then. Yes, I open myself up to emotional pain, but I don't fear it anymore. I know that if I do suffer emotional pain from a bad call, I'm going to get over it. I have the support system and the tools to be able to bounce back from it. But not feeling that is unacceptable to me, because, if you don't let the being unable to resuscitate the pediatric arrest, if you don't let that bother you, then how do you feel the joy of delivering a baby?
Yeah.
You can't insulate yourself from one without denying yourself the ability to feel the other. Mm-hmm. So I just take it and roll with it.
Yeah, no, I think that's good advice. I don't think any of us are good at that balance. I think every single shift you're trying to strike that right balance, and none of us are perfect at it. It's a hard thing to develop, knowing when to kind of open yourself to someone else's burden, someone else's emotions, and when to kind of back off. And I think, like you say, those scenes where you're triaging, that's where you kind of have to dehumanize people and see them as patients and not as humans, or else you're going to freeze and you're going to be stuck and you're going to be no help to anyone. I had a similar call that comes to mind while you were talking about that, where these several teenagers, their car got airborne, 2 of them got ejected. We happened to be first on scene, even though we work in a busy city where the fire department's often first on scene, but we were just across the street. So me and my partner roll up and we get on scene, and immediately we see, somebody's got their head smashed open. There's brains all over the place, and we just casually step over the brains to assess the patients that are alive. And then after the call, we're like, I can't believe we just looked at that patient. You said nothing to be done there, and you move on. And you're like, how did we not just freeze and just stare at them? And it's you kind of compartmentalize and you detach yourself and you move to help the people that you can still help. And that's tough. But I think those are the times when you have to detach, and there's plenty of times where maybe you don't have to do the job, but those types of calls, certainly you have to.
Yeah. I've tipped to the wrong side on a couple of occasions. I remember once a triple fatality motor vehicle accident, and we had extricated the first two bodies, and they were torn up badly. And we were putting the bodies into body bags and had our firefighter EMT gathering up these body bags. And the coroner said, get everything out of the car, the wreckers here. And I look in the car and I said, hey, open that body bag. And the firefighter opened the body bag. And I scooped up a double handful of brains and tossed it in the body bag and made him vomit. And I thought to myself, what a wimp, and then after that call, a couple hours later, the wrecker driver was at the convenience store across the street from our station and had the truck winched up on his flatbed and holding court with a bunch of onlookers about how bad this wreck was. He didn't know how bad it was. The patients were already off the scene before he ever picked up the truck. Yeah. But he's playing with this translucent piece of stuff, and he's kind of, I don't know what I'm going to get out of this truck. It's scrap metal at most. Said they were torn up pretty bad, and when I was walking past, I just reached over his shoulder and grabbed a piece of cartilage out of his hands that he was playing with. And I said, first of all, it's not a piece of the truck. This is a piece of cartilage from one of the victims. And he almost vomited, and everyone scattered. And I lay in bed an hour later, looked, and it was full daylight, and I just could not go to sleep. And I thought, Jesus Christ, I don't even know if I'm a human being anymore. And that was probably the first time I really experienced burnout. And it took me a year or so to rejuvenate from that and become a human being again who actually cared about people.
Yeah, I think recognizing it, that's the first step to solving any problem, right? Is to recognize that in yourself, I think that's key. I remember, I think this was probably a year or two after I'd become an EMT. We ran on a cardiac arrest, first call of the morning out from base, and we get there, and this guy's riggered. He's been dead probably most of the night, and we walk past his wife and his two kids to get to him in the bedroom. And I was still a fairly inexperienced EMT, I guess, because I started compressions, and my my paramedic partner's like, we don't need to be doing compressions, he's long gone. And we had an EMT student with us, and this was like her first call, and so we're loading up the ambulance, getting everything cleaned off and getting back set up to run another call. And I'm talking to her real casually, like, yep, this is what we do. We see dead bodies every day, not a big deal, is what we do. And I jump in the front to start driving, and my paramedic partner's like, Aaron, you need to shut up. She's crying back there. And I was like, oh, people cry about this? And then I was like, that's actually the normal response. My response is the weird one, to be real casual about it, and put on this front. Like, her response was actually the normal one. And I think that was kind of a check to me to be like, I need to remember that we're treating humans again,
Yep. We lose sight of that so often.
Yeah.
Another point that you make in the book is how we often spend more time with these people that we would never choose to spend time with otherwise. The drug addicts, the alcoholics, the perpetrators of crimes, the meth addicts, and oftentimes we spend more time with them than we would devote on our own health and mental well-being. What are some strategies that you would advise a new EMT or new paramedic to kind of take care of themselves so they don't wind up spending more time with the people that they wouldn't normally choose to spend their hours with?
You have to be able to step away from EMS and leave work at work, and go home. And that's the trite pat answer. You leave work at work and don't take it home with you. And that, we all know, anybody who's been in this for any period of time knows that that's horse shit. you do bring work home with you. But we're back to that emotional bank account. You have to be able to stop thinking about whatever it is that's bothering you and put some deposits in that emotional bank account. How? That's going to differ between people. Some people, who your support system is. I have firefighters and cops that say, I can't bring that stuff home to my wife. And I was like, dude, you need to. You may not bring home everything, but your wife and your partners, whoever, needs to know what you go through. I made the mistake of being stoic and not bringing it home and not sharing my feelings. And I woke up or I came home from teaching a class out of town to find half my stuff gone and a Dear Kelly note on the coffee table. And I thought that I was being strong for my wife and not sharing all my baggage with her, when all she wanted was someone who cared enough to talk and to trust her enough to tell me what was going on with me. Learned that the hard way, and it cost me a marriage doing that. So I don't know that you can just turn it off. What I do know is you need to cultivate healthy relationships outside of work, and that's hard for us as healthcare providers, because we spend so much time at work, and you have that shared trauma bond that the people we often hang out and associate with are the people at work. And when you visit or when you socialize outside of work, it turns into a bitch party about this or that patient or this or that doctor or crew member. My friends and I always had a pact. When we were in the duck blind, nobody talks about work, and every one of us was a paramedic at the same place. Sometimes it was difficult, but the pact was the first one that talks about work gets slapped upside the head. And we would do just like somebody. I would do it, and hey, oh, crap, I'm talking about work. You just have to be able to get away from it. As far as here's another thing. We look at these people, the drug addicts and the abusers and all these kind of thing, and it's so easy from 60,000 feet to look at these as different types of people. But one thing I've learned over the years is that the difference between us and the mentally ill / homeless / addicted is very often just a paycheck and a support system.
Yeah.
I can't count the number of EMS providers I know that would be in serious financial difficulty if they missed a month of paychecks. And some of them have the paychecks, but they don't have the support system. Take away both, and you're not that different from the homeless guy on the street corner panhandling, or the person who has mental illness, and he treats it with, or he self-medicates with drugs or with alcohol and spirals out of control, and it's just a vicious cycle. Not that much difference between them and us. So it's a very slippery slope when you start talking about or start letting yourself think about deserves. This person deserves to have this happen to them, or this person does or does not deserve my care. I don't let myself think about that. It's mental discipline, but I kick myself every time I find myself thinking that and repeat to myself that it's wrong to think that way. It's the only way I can get through it.
I think that's a great point. I think that's a good way to actually rejuvenate some of that sympathy for some of these people when you tend to think that way. I mean, we all have our vices, right? And my vice might be Little Caesar's Pizza, and that's more socially acceptable than, a drug addict. That doesn't make me better than them or less deserving than them. Their vice is a much worse one for their health and for their finances. And, I think that's a good point. And you talk about like the COPD patient, you're like, well, they deserve COPD. They've been smoking their whole life. But it turns out, you just have the wrong genetics. Some people can smoke their whole lives and never have an issue. And some people smoke for 5 years and get COPD. And, same with alcoholics. Some of them go into liver failure within a couple years, and some people drink their entire life and never have a liver problem. So it's it is, it's not their fault. And I think that's a great point to actually start feeling some empathy for these people that might be difficult for us to.
Yeah. I'll tell my partner, when I hear colleagues say that, I was going like, well, you eat the 3 a.m. convenience store burrito diet. Do you have your heart attack coming? Do you deserve the heart attack that you're going to have, or the stroke you're going to have because you let stress weigh you down and don't take care of yourself? You eat horribly, just like I do. And you've got you're either vape, you plan your life around your shift around your smoke breaks, and in between your smoke breaks, you have your vape pen. So yeah, let's talk about deserve a lot, because when the inevitable happens with you, did you deserve it, or does that even matter?
Yeah, we all have our struggles. I think that's important to remember.
Yeah.
I love how you end the book. We like to talk about like all the crazy skills we perform as paramedics. We were talking about this earlier, the cardioversions, the intubations, and RSI, and all these like really technical things that we love to do. But you recall a guy that you had transported numerous times, kind of interfacility stuff. I think you were taking him to different doctor's appointments, and he said that you were his hero, not because of any of that stuff. It was, nothing like that mattered to him in the slightest, but it was because you made his wife laugh every time you would come and pick him up for his appointments. And he said his wife didn't laugh that much because of the stuff they were going through, and that was so important to him that you guys made the wife laugh every time you transported him.
Yeah. We bandy around the word, we use the word hero so much these days that it's lost its meaning. If you were in healthcare work and you went to work during COVID, and you risked your health taking care of COVID patients, you're a healthcare hero, and this and that, and to the point that I didn't feel heroic, and I don't think any of my coworkers were heroic. For me, heroism is a higher standard than that, but we do that sort of thing all the time. So I don't like to think of myself as a hero. And even Major Dick Winters from Band of Brothers, from the Easy Company, the 506, said, no, I wasn't a hero, but I worked in the company of heroes. It's easy to recognize that among other people and among our colleagues, Bodie Glennon, trying to save the little boy who drowned, was a hero. I've done things like that. I don't think of myself as a hero in that regard. It's just that, but when a patient tells you that you're their hero for whatever reason, I'll accept that. And I accept it from him. I still don't think of myself as a hero, but it hammered home the point that what we think is important isn't necessarily what's important to the patients. And Miriam, his wife, was very difficult woman to deal with, according to every one of my coworkers. I wasn't supposed to be on the truck for those 2 weeks that I took care of him, but I fielded those angry phone calls because one of the crews angered her for some reason. And the woman wasn't angry. She's been married to a man for 50 something years. She was his first, he was her first sweetheart. They high school sweethearts, they married, spent their entire life together. It's the only man she's ever dated. And she knows that then within the month, he's going to die. And she's lashing out. Put any of us in that same situation, would we do any better? And at some point, I had to step back from it and go, wow, this is why she's acting this way, and not hold it against her. My natural instinct was, when we went to pick her up and she's, oh my God, you're going to drop him. And my standard response for that is, don't worry, man. We only drop patients on Wednesday or whatever day it is. And when the patient and their family members' eyes wide and go, oh shit, what's today? and we all get a laugh out of it. And she got a laugh out of that and broke the ice, and I looked her in the eyes and I said, I promise you, I'm going to take good care of him, and won her trust that way. When a patient tells you, you're my hero, for something as simple as that, humanity, puts into perspective all the cool stuff we do, you know. That doesn't matter. Were you nice is probably the number one thing, and it costs us absolutely nothing to do. You know, I don't know how long you've been doing this, Aaron, but I've been doing this for 31 years, and I have yet to have a patient or family member walk up to me in the grocery store and say, "I remember you. No one intubates like you do. Man, you are an airway samurai." Or, "Oh my God, when I saw that 12 lead roll off the printer, I didn't know what to make of it. But boy, you interpreted it perfectly." No one cares. No
Yeah,
one
that's so
cares.
true.
You do care if you're nice to them. We used to go get get breakfast every morning at the local, at the deli counter at the grocery store, and the worker at the deli counter, I don't even remember her name, and quite frankly, I don't even remember the call. But she comes out from the deli counter every time, hugs my neck, chats me up, and she gave me free breakfast. but but and I asked my partner, who is a savant for remembering these things. He said, "Yeah, we worked her husband cardiac arrest, and we didn't get him back, but you know." And she said, "I didn't even remember the call, but she remembered, and remembered for years after the fact. And the fact that I put my arms around her and said, 'I'm so sorry for your loss,' and actually meant it, meant the world to her. Never forgot it." So
Yeah, I say that all the time, even in the ER. We could do the best evidence-based medicine and find that dangerous diagnosis or the potential life threat and treat it aggressively, get them admitted, but they don't care about any of that stuff if we weren't nice about it and if we didn't take the time to sit down at the bedside and listen to why they are there and explain things to them. They don't care about any of that. That's what we, put first and foremost in our mind, is like finding the dangerous diagnosis and treating it. And the patient doesn't care if you didn't do it while being at the bedside and caring for them and making sure they felt understood. I think that's a great point. I also like your point about how you dealt with the angry wife. Like, you could have chosen to get really offended. Like, no, of course we're not going to drop your husband. We do this every day. We have all these ways of lifting patients safely. Like, no, we're not going to drop him. And you could have responded with the same anger and been offended about it. But instead you chose to joke around with her and actually kind of try to take down her defenses. And the difference between that was the absolute world to that couple. I mean, and I think we have those decisions every single day. I mean, this is the worst day of most of these patients' lives when we encounter them. So of course they're going to come across as aggressive and critical of everything we're doing. But you have to remember, you're not in their shoes. You're not dealing with the experience they are. They think this anxiety attack's a heart attack. It's our job to prove that it's not and not to write them off. And I think that's a really good paradigm shift that you have to have. He talks about that, a similar thing in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey, the paradigm shift on the train where this dad's letting his kids run all over the place and they're terrorizing the whole train car, and everyone's getting offended, like, why won't this dad control his kids? And then come to find out they had just come from the mother's funeral, and he says, I don't know how to handle this, and I guess they don't know how to handle it either. And you're like, wow, when you make that paradigm shift and put yourself in someone else's shoes, it really changes how we respond to people.
yeah. I 55-year-old paramedic, I lost my train of thought. Oh my God. I still calculate a dopamine dose in my head, but I can't remember what I did just a few minutes ago. These things, you got to put yourself in your patient's shoes and know where they're coming from. And I think nobody is aware of other people's journey. And I have responded to anger, wrongly. I had a bad tendency, and still do on a bad day, but not very often. I can let it roll off my shoulders, but I tend to reflect the attitude projected to me when I'm tired, and or when I'm not at my best. But most times, a little gentle humor will diffuse those situations. And yes, the patient, you can do the best medicine in the world, but no one cares unless you were nice. And that's the Teddy Roosevelt quote that I love. No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care.
Mhm.
And then it's important to them. So I try to live that adage as much as I can.
Yeah, that's a good one. Well, Kelly, I really appreciate your time. I thank you for coming on the show. I think this was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. Where can people find you and follow you?
If you go online and just Google Stephen Kelly Grayson or Kelly Grayson EMS, you're going to find me. The only other hit you're going to get is Adrian Palicki, the lieutenant commander on the Orville, the TV series. But other than that, if you just Google Kelly Grayson EMS, you'll hit a million hits. You can go to at Ambo Driver on Twitter. Grayson EMS on Facebook, facebook.com/Grayson EMS takes you to my professional page. And kellygrayson.com should take you to my personal page, which is under reconstruction at the moment. My books you can all find on Amazon under Stephen Kelly Grayson. You'll find those there. If you just look Kelly Grayson, you will find the man who writes gay porn. More power to him. I think from judging from his reviews, he makes a lot of money, and I'm kind of jealous. But if you look under Stephen Kelly Grayson, you'll find all my books, and that's where you can find me.
And you do write some fiction that's not gay porn, right?
Yeah. Look, romance and erotica is lucrative. I'm thinking of a pen name. I seriously am, trying to turn look, if something like 50 Shades of Grey can make someone multimillionaires as poorly as that was written, I'm in, baby. Yes, I do write a lot of fiction. Urban fantasy and military sci-fi are my fortes, and just flights and whimsy. If something is just ridiculous and makes a good premise and makes me laugh, I'll write about it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Kelly. I'll let you get out of here, and we'll see you later.
Okay. Thank you for having me on, Aaron.
Absolutely.